أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. Verses number 17 onwards. إن يوم الفصل كان ميقاتا يوم ينفخ في الصور فتأتون أفواجا وفتحت السماء فكانت أبوابا وسيرت الجبال فكانت سرابا. Indeed, the day of judgment is trist. The day the trumpet will be blown and you will come in groups, and the sky will be opened and becomes gates, and the mountains will be set moving and become a mirage. Indeed, hell is an ambush. After those signs of Allah's wisdom in this world was mentioned in previous verses as an argument for the people that they have to believe that this world is not created in vain, Allah mentions what is the purpose of this creation, where this creation is moving to. إِنَّ يَوْمَ الْفَصْلِ كَانَ مِيقَاتًا. The day of judgment is the appointed day. Miqat is from waqt, the time when an appointment is set, the time when an arrangement is made. So the arrangement which is made for all these things which are moving in this order, acting and working in this order, is Yawm al-Fasl, the day of Fasl. Now, here the way the sentence is put forward in the verse, إِنَّ يَوْمَ الْفَصْلِ كَانَ مِيقَاتًا. It was, kana denotes the past tense. It was a miqat. Of course, we could say that this is past meaning present because of assertion of something which is very, very categorically asserted. However, the exegetes say that here it means that right from the beginning of the creation, when we started all these things to be set to moving, and when, of course, we created you in pairs, when we created the mountains, when we created the sky, we set the sun, the moon, and everything, we had set for it an appointed time. It means the creation right from the beginning was with a type of duration that we had set for it. And after that duration, certainly all things would come to a state where you can see why these things were working in this way. So there is a miqat, there was a miqat right from the beginning of the creation. There was an appointed time when, of course, we had decreed all these creations should come to that point, should come to the appointed time. And this, of course, gives meaning and purpose to everything. This is the meaning of the verses which talk about the whole creation being haqq and not batil. Otherwise, it's all batil, it's all in vain. But since we had set this appointed time for it, then it is, of course, something which goes according to the standards of haqq. And this miqat, of course, is like the lifetime of human beings. As we have a lifetime, that we have an appointed time, we have a miqat of this life for ourselves, that when it comes to an end, we should leave this world. The whole world has a miqat. In a sense, the whole world has a death. It comes to that point and it dies. And of course, this is the meaning of the blowing into the trumpet. So as animals die, as plants die, as human beings die, the whole world would die one day. And that's the appointed time for it. That's the ajal of this world. And then when it dies, then of course there is a process of coming back to life for the whole world. And we'll discuss about that later. Now, when is that appointed time, that arranged time? Is Yawmul Fasl, the day of Fasl. Now, Fasl literally means separation, to part things from each other. This is Fasl. So that's why it is called Yawm of day of separation. Also, Fasl is used for judgment, because when a judge decrees a judgment, it cuts off the argument. That's the end of it. So that's Faslul Khitab. It's used in the Quran as well. وَآتَيْنَاهُ الْحِكْمَةِ. To Dawood we gave wisdom. وَفَصْلُ الْخِطَابِ. And وَفَصْلَ الْخِطَابِ. And we gave him Faslul Khitab. That's judgment. He had the final word to say in everything. That means that he was a judge. Now, that's why Yawmul Fasl is usually translated in Quran and interpreted as being the day of judgment. And Allah mentions, of course, in the Quran, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَفْصِلُ بَيْنَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Allah would judge between them on the day of judgment. He would cut off all the arguments. He would put an end to the arguments that people have about the creation, about God, about everything. He would put an end to all that by a judgment. So one meaning of Yawm al-Fasl is the day of judgment, as is translated here. Indeed, the day of judgment is the appointed time. And that's appointed time for the whole world to come to a new state, to come to a new phase. The other meaning of Yawm al-Fasl is separation between haqq and batil. This is also used in the Quran, and many exegetes have preferred this meaning. Although it has some sort of meaning of judgment incorporated in it. However, the very meaning of separation of haqq and batil has more reality into it than the judgment of a judge. It means what is batil would go one side and what is haqq would go another side. In this world, haqq and batil are mixed. Mu'min and kafir live together. Wrong argument and right argument are very difficult to ascertain and to distinguish from each other. However, when you go to the next world, all these would part. The haqq would go one side, batil would go another side. And that's why people, if they are evil, they go to hell. If they are good, they go to paradise. Paradise and hell are this separation of good and evil from each other. And so we can say Yawm al-Fasl is the day of separation. لأي يوم أجلت ليوم الفصل. Why all these arguments and different opinions and also mixing of haqq and batil is postponed to continue being together, because it's all postponed until the day of separation, Yawm al-Fasl. Now, I saw some of the exegetes have also understood another meaning from this, which, of course, we already mentioned about the death of the world. However, what I brought here about the death of the whole world was understood from miqat. Now, some exegetes say that no, the death of the world is understood from this very idea of Yawm al-Fasl. It means separation, but separation of something which has ripened, which has maturated from its origin. And then he says, you can look in this world, everything that comes to maturity, it separates from its origin. Like, for example, a baby in the womb of the mother, when it comes to maturity, it separates from the mother. It can stand alive on its own feet. A fruit, when it comes to maturity, it separates from the tree. Or even if it does not separate, it changes form like a flower. When it comes to maturity, it is a complete separation distancing from the original form, coming to a new form. Now, he says, this is the late Ayatollah Taliqani, in a tafsir that he had only about the 30th juz of the Quran. He says that Yawm al-Fasl means when the whole world maturates. This world is moving towards a destiny, towards a maturation. And when it is ripened, when it matures, it separates from its original form. It comes into a new form. It's just like a fruit ripening, and you can pick it from the tree. And Allah picks this from its original form. It comes to a new form, new stage, and of course everything would change in that new stage of the world. We know that when we come to the day of judgment, when that new stage of the world comes, many things would change in this world. The laws that we understand from this earth, the way this earth works now, the sciences that we have about it, the theories that we have about it, all would change in the next world. You have heard many things about paradise, for example, which are unbelievable if we want to imagine it in this world, or about hell, because those are the way the world works when it comes to its new stage, when it comes to its new maturity. Just like a baby, you cannot imagine how it works when it comes out of the womb of the mother. It's completely different from the way that system works inside the womb. When this world comes out of this womb, which is of course created for it by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in which it's working in this very premature way, as Allah mentions, this is not life that you have on this earth. The life is not what you see. Life is for the hereafter. It's something similar to life. It's a rehearsal of life, so to speak, that you have in this world. وَإِنَّ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةَ لَهِيَ الْحَيَوَانِ. This is just a rehearsal, a play. The day of Akhirah is the real life. It shows itself. The real life shows itself. So day of separation, or Yawm al-Fasl, means when this world maturates and comes to a stage when it leaves its premature or its original form and then goes to a new phase. And that has been, of course, set right from the beginning. The day Allah started to create the whole universe, this separation was a part and parcel of the world, or this appointment, or this period was a part and parcel of this world, just exactly the way Allah creates human beings with a lifespan. An ajal is set for every human being, and they cannot go beyond their ajal, beyond the lifespan that Allah has decreed for them. This world also cannot go beyond that lifespan. And when that lifespan comes, of course, things would change. The whole world would die to come back to life another day. So, إِنَّ يَوْمَ الْفَصْلِ كَانَ مِيقَاتًا يَوْمَ يُنْفَخُ فِي الصُّورِ فَتَأْتُونَ أَفْوَاجًا. The day the trumpet will be blown and you will come in groups. Now, we have difficulty with this verse. يَوْمَ يُنْفَخُ فِي الصُّورِ. The day the trumpet is blown. Again, is it a metaphor or should we take it literally? Whenever we come to such verses in which an imagery is used, or is it used at all, we have this difficulty of argument between literalists and rationalists, those who say that no, we have to rationally analyze these things and see what is meant by it metaphorically. As in every language, metaphor is used, we have to see whether there is a metaphor here or not. Now, some exegetes or some of the Qurra have recited this differently. and they have tried to somehow wipe out the whole question of whether this is metaphorical or literal. They say it's not sur, not yunfakhu fi sur, it's yawma yunfakhu fi suwar. Now, this is a very nice meaning, of course, and especially our rational mind likes this better than yawma yunfakhu fi sur. And suwar is the plural of surah. Surah is the form. And form are used especially for human souls, for any type of form, any type or any species, any form of being, surah is used. Now, when Allah says يَوْمَ يُنْفَخُ فِي الصُّوَرِ, especially it means when He blows life into the souls of human beings, that they are dead. Especially the concept of nafakh, which is used in the Quran as a process of life-giving, isn't it? وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي, I blew from my spirit into human body or into human soul. And فَإِذَا سَوَّيْتُهُ وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي, it gives the sense that there should be a blowing of life from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala into every form so that they come into life. And since, of course, human beings are dead and their forms or their souls are unconscious after the first blowing, then Allah would blow into the suwar, into the souls. Now, then there's no question of what is this trumpet, what is this horn in which Allah blows, because it wipes the whole issue away. There's no question of trumpet or anything like that. However, there's one question here, because Quran doesn't talk about one blowing. Quran talks about two blowings, isn't it? وَنُفَخَ فِي الصُّورِ فَصَعِقَ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَّا مَنْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ. And the day when the trumpet is blown, everyone in the heavens and in the earth would go unconscious. And those who are in heavens, of course, are angels, they would go unconscious. Those who are on the earth are human beings, they go unconscious as well. Whether they are dead or alive, the souls would go unconscious. All souls would go unconscious. And then ثُمَّ نُفِخَ فِيهِ أُخْرَى, then there is another blowing, and then every soul would come back to life. There could be an argument here. If you say that according to some of the recitation, which take it يُنْفَخُ فِي الصُّوَرِ rather than يُنْفَخُ فِي الصُّورِ, both of which are acceptable recitations, then what do you do about the first blowing? Because you say يُنْفَخُ فِي الصُّوَرِ means blowing life into the souls. Now, what about the first blowing, which every soul dies? Well, the answer would be, well, that's blowing of death. Allah blows death into every soul. Now, then we can criticize the idea by saying that, well, nowhere in the Quran, you argued that it is used in the Quran, that the nafkh is used in the Quran for the process of life-giving. Now you say that it is used also for the process of death-giving, that Allah gives death to everything. Of course, He is both mumit and muhi. That there's no question about that. He gives death and He gives life. He makes people die, animals die, angels die, and He makes them to come back to life. And of course, now, because we are living in this state, we think that, well, that name of Allah as Muhi is very useful, that's very good. But why Allah should have a name as Mumit, making things die? When, inshallah, we go to next stage or higher stages, we would understand that that name of Mumit is as important as the name of Muhi, because unless there is maut, unless there is death, there is no higher stage life. And therefore, they are hand in hand. They are part and parcel of each other. The name Mumit and the name Muhi are acting in cooperation to move the whole process of creation forward and to higher stages. Now, whatever the case, we have many other verses in the Quran which which do not conform with the idea of Sawar. فَإِذَا نُقِرَ فِي النَّاقُورِ. Now, this you cannot say that this is blowing into the Sawar, into the souls. Naqur is another term for trumpet, and maybe on purpose it is used, that gives the idea that no, it's something else in which Allah would blow, and then things would go different. Not Sawar, and it's Sur, because Sur means Naqur as well, and Naqur and Sur have the same meaning, and of course if you take Naqur, then you cannot put it as Sawar. I think we have to just brush this idea of different recitation of Sur aside. As I said, this recitation that we have here in hand, this is Hafs from Asim, from Abi Abdurrahman, from Amirul Mu'minin alayhi salam. This is the most accurate recitation of the Quran that we have in hand, and we go according to this recitation, not any other recitation of the Quran. Now, therefore, it is trumpets. يَوْمَ يُنْفَخُ فِي الصُّورِ, the day when the trumpet is blown. As I said, when we take it as trumpet, then we have this argument and quarrel, whether there is a real trumpet there, who would blow into that trumpet, and what's the significance of blowing into that trumpet. Usually the exegetes say that it's just like a warning coming to the world, a decree of Allah coming by a significant sign, just like when an army is being mustered and mobilized, a trumpet is blown, especially in old days when they wanted to give the warning to the army that prepare, we are moving now, or we are setting for attack, we want to charge, or whatever. A trumpet was blown. In the whole world of creation, when Allah wants to notify the angels, when Allah wants to notify the whole world that the time has come, the appointed time has come, then something like trumpet, not for us, for the angels, is blown. And that trumpet is blown by one angel. Of course, it's not like a trumpet that we have in this world. It has the same significance of that trumpet in the world, the same significance of the trumpet that we usually use in this world for troops and for army. The same thing is used in the world of angels, as it is a blowing in a trumpet for the angels. And of course we have in traditions that angel Israfil would blow in this trumpet. And of course we know when we say angel Israfil blows in that trumpet, it means Allah blows in it, as it's used in the Quran everywhere. Allah reveals things to the heart of the Prophet. That means Jibreel brings it down. Allah takes lives from human beings. That means Israel takes lives from human beings. So the angels are just part of the process of act of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that means Allah blows into that trumpet. Now, certainly the first blowing is blowing of death, is as signifying the death of the whole world, including the angels. And that's why we have in traditions that even angel Israfil, when he blows into the trumpet, he goes unconscious himself as well. He dies as well. Well, death, by death we mean unconsciousness, because death of soul is could not be imagined. Death of human being as a mixture of soul and body is conceivable, because we say death is the process of separation of soul from the body. But when we talk about death of a soul, there is no process of separation of anything from anything else. It just means unconsciousness. Just like a death, just like going into a very, very deep coma. And the Quran says, yes, all the souls would go into that very deep coma when the trumpet is blown. The first trumpet is blown. And all the angels would do the same. They go into a very deep coma, and nothing would remain alive except very, very few souls or angels, as is mentioned in Surah Al-Haqqa, only 8 souls would remain alive and all other would die. فَإِذَا نُفِخَ فِي السُّورِ نَفَخَةٌ وَاحِدَةٌ, when one blowing is blown into the trumpet, وَحُمِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ وَالْجِبَالِ, and by that one blowing the whole earth and mountains are taken away, are drifted away in a very, very tumultuous change of the whole universe and creation. وَحُمِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ وَالْجِبَالِ وَدُكَّتَا دَكَّةً وَاحِدًا, and then there's one pounding and everything would change. The mountains would go just like dust and everything. فَيَوْمَئِذٍ وَقَعَتِ الْوَاقِعَةُ, that is the day when the waqa'ah would happen. And then it says وَالْمَلَكُ عَلَىٰ أَرْجَائِهَا, then there are no angels anymore in this universe. They are either on the verge of life and death, عَلَىٰ أَرْجَائِهَا, or on the verge of the universe. They are taken out of this universe, whatever that might mean. وَيَحْمِلُ عَرْشَ رَبِّكَ يَوْمَئِذٍ فَوْقَهُمْ ثَمَانِيَةٌ, and only 8. Now, 8 what? That's another discussion. When we talk about Surah Haqqa, inshallah, we discuss that. But 8 would carry the throne of your Lord at that time, and all other souls and angels would go unconscious. That is a blowing of death. In a sense, the first blowing of trumpet is the full manifestation of the name of Allah al-Mumit. Everything dies. لمن الملك اليوم لله الواحد القهار. Who rules this day? Is Allah al-Wahid al-Qahhar. Nothing else is there. Now, of course, the name Mumit is not kept for that day to show itself. The name Mumit manifests itself every day in this world, isn't it? Every day, many human beings die, many flowers die, many animals die. So, and even the whole universe dies. And it comes back to life again every day. As in Surah Fatir, we have إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُمْسِكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ أَن تَزُولَا. It's not the case that Allah has created the universe and it is continuing its being for itself. No, every moment it is on the verge of disappearance and destruction. Allah is keeping it from destruction. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُمْسِكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ أَن تَزُولَا. Allah is keeping the universe, the earth and heavens from destruction at every moment. So the whole universe is dying and coming back to life, dying and coming back to life. But this is a type of death which insinuates continuation of the same life. However, when the day of judgment comes, that death of the whole universe, that manifestation of the name Mumit in this world would set everything to change. And you know what will happen. After every soul would die, would go unconscious, then no one is there to realize what happens in this world, and Allah would set a process of evolution. Well, you could call it revolution as well. It's a revolution in the world, and it's an evolution when the whole universe would move from one phase to another phase, and the earth would change to another earth, the skies would change to another skies. يَوْمَ تُبَدَّلُ الْأَرْضُ غَيْرَ الْأَرْضِ وَالسَّمَاوَاتِ, the day when the earth would be changed to a new earth, the skies would be changed to a new sky, the universe will be changed to a new universe. And then, of course, that's wonderful. When we come back to life, inshallah, we come back to a new place, to something totally different from what we had left before. And we might, of course, imagine how surprising that type of world would be for us, because everything then works differently. You touch water, but your hand doesn't get wet, probably. Or you touch fire, but your hand wouldn't burn. Maybe, we don't know. And apart from rivers running on the earth of water, you might see rivers running of honey and of milk and these different things which are mentioned in the Quran as in the paradise. So it's a new universe. And this, of course, this Yawm al-Fasl is the appointed time for the whole world. Now, we talked about the first trumpet, which is the blowing of death into the whole universe. And then the second trumpet is the blowing of life into the whole universe. Now, that is very, very wonderful, because it's not the case that only the souls which went unconscious would come back to life. Everything comes to life. Even the rocks would speak and would talk and would understand and would realize. Your body organs, your hand, your skin, you can go on talking and conversing with your hand for several hours, for example, about one issue maybe, and you may have different opinions put forward. Your hand might say something and you might say something else. You might realize that how wonderful this piece of flesh and bone was in the previous world, what I did not realize. And you might realize that this hand which was dead or whatever around you, even your clothes which were around you, they would have realized things but you did not understand. And that's why they can bear witness on the day of judgment to things. They can speak. يومئذ يومئذ يخرج الناس أشتاتا ليروا أعمالهم. Then people come out to be shown their actions. Their actions come to life and they see their actions there. Just like these imaginary films that you have seen about a century later, for example, people, instead of you see them on TV, they come just like an image in front of you and they talk to you. Of course, this is just imagination of our mind, of course, and of course imagination one day would come to reality, because if we can imagine something, then we go after it to find a way to create it. But in the next world, things are really, really difficult to imagine. And about the earth, for example, Allah says, يَوْمَئِذٍ تُحَدِّثُ أَخْبَارَهَا. On that day, the earth will speak of its stories. You pass by a place on the earth, and that place of the earth can talk about its stories for you for a long time. بِأَنَّ رَبَّكَ أَوْحَى لَهَا. Because that blowing, because that wahy has come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the earth. وَقَالُوا لِجُلُودِهِمْ لَمَا شَهِدْتُمْ عَلَيْنَا. They say to their skins, why are you witnessing against us? Why do you speak? Of course, they cannot help. Their skin speaks and they cannot help it. And say, why are you speaking against us? قالوا أنطقنا الله الذي أنطق كل شيء. Allah, who has made everything speak on this day, has made us to speak as well. And we can speak. You didn't realize we could understand things, we could see things, and everything is recorded in us. Now we can bear witness and we can talk and we can say things. So the second blowing brings life to everything. And of course, if very, very, very dead objects like rocks could speak on that day and could have a sort of life, you can imagine what type of life human soul could have and what type of life the angels would have. That is the true life. وَمَا هَذِهِ الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا لَحْوٌ وَلَعِبٌ. This world is just play and rehearsal of life. وَإِنَّ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةَ لَهِيَ الْحَيَوَانِ. The next world is the real life. You will see the real life there. And that's, of course, just a splinter, a splash of the ocean of the life of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because life comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Still, when on that day the life manifests itself, it's just a very, very superficial manifestation of the life of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now here, it doesn't talk about the first blowing. It talks about the second blowing. يَوْمَ يُنْفَخُ فِي الصُّورِ. When the trumpet is blown, فَتَأْتُونَ أَفْوَاجًا. You will come in groups. Now, of course, these groups are mentioned in many different places of the Quran. as أفواجا زمرا يوم وسيق الذين كفروا إلى جهنم زمرا وسيق الذين اتقوا إلى الجنة زمرا زمرا أفواجا, and other expressions used for grouping, separating people from each other. Inshallah, next week we'll talk about this. I don't think we can finish this verse by next week. Anyhow, inshallah, we see how we do. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi at-tahirin.
Thank you very much indeed, Sheikh. In one respect, we are looking forward to seeing that amazing world. In another hand, it's very frightening. Anyway, we open the floor for...
It's more wonderful than being frightening, actually. So,
yes, thank you for that comment. Brothers, sisters, you want to open up the floor? Questions, comments? Okay. Munzur, you look... no? Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum.
alaykum as-salam.
You mentioned that at the end everything will die except 8, and they will carry the arsh. So when the whole universe, everything would have been changed, how is there any details as to how they will survive this and how they will continue from the past to the next stage, this 8?
Well, they change as well, but they are kings and they are like rulers in this world, and therefore they do not die, they do not go under judgment of Allah, they are judges themselves, so to speak. But there is, of course, the controversy, these 8, whether they are angels or they are human beings. According to our traditions from A'imma alayhimus salam, there are 8 human beings. أربعة من الأولين وأربعة من الآخرين, 4 from the people of the past and 4 from the posterities. And the 4 from the past are Noah, Ibrahim, Musa, and Isa alayhimus salam. And the 4 from the posterity are Muhammad, Ali, Hassan, and Hussein alayhimus salam. These are the souls which are stronger than the angels, which are above the angels, even above Israfil and Mikael, who are archangels, very, very strong. Even those angels could not bear the type of change which comes. They cannot bear even even they cannot bear that blowing of the name Mumit of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the whole world. So these 8 are, as I said, they are kings in the universe.
Thank you. Sisters, any sisters? No? Firoz? No? Muhammad?
Sheikh, you mentioned about different recitations, and I know it's transgressing from the topic, but how does this come about? Because we are told that the Quran is unchanged and exactly the same as it was read by the Prophet. Then why we have this different recitation, things like Sur and Suwar and Malik and Malik?
Mm-hmm. Well, the Quran is preserved, and one of the most significant evidence for that is that even the nuances in recitation is preserved for us. That's how different people recited it. The only thing is that we have to authenticate that ourselves. Otherwise, of course, the Quran is preserved in full. The different recitations came about for a very natural reason. Of course, in the Sunni scholarship, we have an idea about these different recitations, which I call funny, with all due respect. Funny because they say that the Quran revealed with 7 recitations or 10 recitations, which, of course, why there should have been such a thing. The different recitations came about when the Quran was codified in a unified code at the time of Uthman. And, before that, people of different areas were reciting the Quran, but some of them were reciting it wrongly. And one of the companions of the Prophet, I don't remember his name now, when he was doing jihad in Azerbaijan, in a battle, he went there and he saw that the people there are reciting the Quran, which is very different from the Quran that they were reciting in Medina, because of different, when something is reported and then you recite it, and then someone else learns it from you and they try to recite it, and it goes on and go on, and especially if people of Azerbaijan who are Turks want to recite Arabic Quran, you can say what change it might come to it. So when he came back to Medina, he put it forward with companions of the Prophet, and especially Amirul Mu'mineen was behind this whole idea very forcefully, that we have to codify the Quran. We have to destroy all the Qurans which are written by people. We have to write the Quran ourselves, very authentic one, as we know it, the recitation of the Prophet, and then send it to different areas and ask people only to copy from this Quran and recite only this Quran. So the Quran was written down at the time of Uthman, and it was called Nuskhatul Imam, the leading version of the Quran, or the version which should be followed by everyone. And 8 or 9 copies of it were written in Medina, and they were sent to different areas of Muslim land, to Egypt, to Azerbaijan, to Khorasan, and different areas. And every Muslim was somehow obliged or forced to destroy their own Qurans. If they wanted a copy of the Quran, they should have it copied from this version of the Quran, which went from Medina. Now, the problem was that the Quran written at that time, there was no dots. There were no dots, no diacritical marks, no fatha, no zamma, so you could recite it in any way you liked. However, to address this problem as well, with every version, every copy of the Quran, one qari was sent to the area. A qari which was very, of course, trusted in their recitation. They had the whole Quran memorized, and they were sent with the Quran, with a copy of the Quran. Now, these qaris among themselves had some differences in recitation. And of course, they tried to eliminate these differences, and to very great extent it's eliminated. You see, of course, very, very small nuances in different recitations. However, they remained. And then they couldn't do anything about it, because even in Medina, they couldn't come to agreement with each other about how the Prophet recited the Quran, for example, this verse. And since they couldn't come to agreement with each other, and of course no one accepted from Amirul Mu'mineen his word at that time, because they just compared him with other companions, although very knowledgeable, but they said, okay, this is your opinion of recitation. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud has his own opinion, for example. Ubay ibn Ka'b has his own opinion of this recitation. So they could not agree among themselves in Medina. So the qari who went with the Quran, with a copy of the Quran, went from his own learning and tradition of recitation of the Quran. As I said, very fortunately, all other recitations were deserted at the time, except this recitation that we have today, which I have said before as well. This is a Shiite recitation of the Quran. All the people in the chain of recitation of this Quran are Shiites. And it goes back to Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam. So we take this copy of the Quran, which is of course published in Saudi Arabia by people who are not very good with Shias. We take this to be the most authentic recitation of the Quran.
Want to add something? Yeah.
There's also a verse in the Quran about muta. And one of the Tafseer by Ali Puya, he says that some of the Sahaba used to recite it differently. They used to add something to it. That, when you take advantage of women or whatever, you pay them their dues. Pay them the dues is not in a current Quran. But they say that they used to recite it differently. So how did that come about, that people used to actually add or subtract?
The verse, of course, is like some other verses in the Quran, and what was added was this: فَمَسْتَمْتَعْتُمْ بِهِ مِنْهُنَّ فَآتُوهُنَّ أُجُورَهُنَّ. And those who you enjoy from them, or istimta is to use enjoyment and pleasure, and of course both men and women seek pleasure from each other as well as life. فَمَسْتَمْتَعْتُمْ بِهِ مِنْهُنَّ فَآتُوهُنَّ أُجُورَهُنَّ. Then some recited in this way: فَمَسْتَمْتَعْتُمْ بِهِ مِنْهُنَّ إِلَىٰ أَجَلٍ, until a period of time, which brings it to the fold of concept of mut'ah. And فَآتُوهُنَّ أُجُورَهُنَّ. Now, it's not only this case. We have many other verses which there are additions in it. For example, يَا أَيُّهَا النَّبِيُّ بَلِّغْ مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ مِنْ رَبِّكَ وَإِنْ لَمْ تَفْعَلْ فَمَا بَلَّغْتَ رِسَالَتَهُ وَاللَّهُ يَعْصِمُكَ مِنَ النَّاسِ. O Prophet, convey whatever is revealed to you from your Lord, and if you do not, then you have not completed your mission. Now, some in Kafi there are many traditions that it was revealed like this: يا أيها النبي بلغ ما أنزل إليك من ربك في علي وإن لم تفعل فما بلغت رسالته. And so convey whatever is revealed to you regarding Ali. And there are many other verses, both in Sunni books and in Shi'i books. You cannot say that this is a Shi'i phenomenon. It's in Sunni books we have as well many such things, that it was revealed like this, the verse was like that, and then it changed into this. Now, all these we take it, and this is why, before our own explanation, this is why the Akhbaris in the Shi'i tradition, many of them have believed that the Quran is distorted, and that we don't have that true Quran. Many of it, there are lots of deletions, not additions. Of course, they say there is no addition to the Quran. So whatever you recite here is the Quran, is revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there are deletions. Something has been missed from the Quran. Now, of course, both Shi'i and Sunni scholars who have come across these traditions, many of them in very authentic books, like Al-Kafi, for example, or like in Bukhari, we have the same things. They say that these are explanations which are given by the companions, or especially in our case by A'immah alayhimus salam, by Amirul Mu'mineen, that the verse meant this, not that the verse was revealed like this. That the verse, for example, يَا أَيُّهَا النَّبِي بَلِّغْ مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ مِنْ رَبِّكَ, it's meant يَا أَيُّهَا النَّبِي بَلِّغْ مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ مِنْ رَبِّكَ فِي عَلِيٍّ. It meant that. Or فَمَا اسْتَمْتَعْتُمْ بِهِ مِنْهُنَّ فَآتُوهُنَّ أُجُورَهُنَّ. It's meant فَمَا اسْتَمْتَعْتُمْ بِهِ مِنْهُنَّ إِلَىٰ أَجَلٍ مُسَمَّى فَآتُوهُنَّ أُجُورَهُنَّ. In this way, of course, I think we can understand better why, in the same way that the Imams or companions believed in the integrity of the whole Quran and completely denied any distortion, they also believed that these traditions were right. So we make a compromise between the two.
Thank you. Any sisters before we come back to brothers? Sisters, no? Nizam?
Sheikh, going back to the next world, how clear is the evidence, one way or the other, whether we are all going to be there in the current form, physical form, or not? And which way do you lean personally?
Well, certainly we are not going to be in the current form. The form will change. However, if current form, by current form you mean physical, as well as having a spiritual aspect and physical aspect, the Quranic interpretation of the whole Day of Judgment is very clear that it's physical. It talks about resurrection of the bones. It talks about resurrection of people who are in the grave. Otherwise, the souls, well, could go to a very, very remote place from the graves and the idea of the earth. The traditions talk about it in a very, very explicit way, that there is a bodily resurrection. Even the Quran talks about a physical resurrection of the whole world. The earth changes to a new earth. The physical world wouldn't go away. The Quran explicitly mentions that the physical world wouldn't go away. It would be there. So if the physical world is there, why should we think that there is no physical life for creatures who are in this universe or in this world? The evidence is so overwhelming that Ghazali actually believes that the philosophers are kuffar because they deny the physical resurrection. And he says that one of the most accepted ideas among all Muslims, supported by evidence from the Quran and the tradition, is physical resurrection. So since they do not believe in physical resurrection, of course, some specific philosophers he's talking about, therefore they are kuffar and they are not Muslims, which of course that was a quarrel between Ghazali and philosophers of his time. So I think the evidence is very, very overwhelming, and that's why the overwhelming majority of Muslim scholars, except, as I said, some philosophers, they have agreed that there is a physical resurrection.
Okay, leading from that then, with the limited imagination that we have, it is then difficult to understand how this physical form's needs would be met. If we, on the other hand, if we imagine rivers with milk and honey, then I guess those milk and honey are to be drunk and eaten.
Yes.
Then I guess under the current context, one worries about health, safety of those streams, worries about how are they going to be digested and the needs for everything else. And then also the very big question arises in my mind, what then, if we are in this physical form, what is it then the next step? What would we as human beings be aiming for? Or what would be our objectives? What would be our goals? What would we be aspiring for from day to day in that world?
Yes. Well, of course, the traditions have taken the duty of answering in details all these questions. Well, first of all, there are no microbes in paradise to pollute those things with diseases, because there is no evil. No evil, and disease is a type of evil that we human beings suffer from. So there are no evil in paradise. They have said that about digestion and the needs. They have said that whatever you eat or drink would come out like a very, very pleasant sweat out of your body, so you don't have other needs there in paradise. And they have gone into very minute details of how life would be there. You want a bird to be eaten, of course, why that bird should be eaten by you but while it has a life? Well, they say, for example, something which is very, very far from our imagination. Even the most crazy imaginations cannot imagine that you just ask the bird, come, I want to eat you. It comes, you eat it, and then it flies and goes again. Now, you cannot imagine these things, of course. This is outside the realm of our imagination. But I think this idea of spiritual resurrection only is, in a way, originated from some ascetics who regard the physical world to be evil. And I think it's wrong. Physical world is not evil. And our physic and our body is not evil. It's very good. Now, some mystics, especially in Christianity, and then, of course, coming into Islam, in Buddhism, in all traditions of mysticism, there is this idea that body, physic is evil. And we have to somehow refrain from anything which looks after the body or addresses the needs of the body, which of course Islam says something completely contrary to that you have to look after the needs of your body as you have to look after the needs of your soul. And this idea has somehow given rise to the idea that, well, what's the purpose of having physical life in the next world? If physical life is evil, why should we have physical life? We should have only a spiritual life. I think if we distance ourselves from this idea, the physical life of human being is a blessed type of life. And it's this physical life, the mixture of soul and body, which gives the capacity to human being to grow. Otherwise, pure souls cannot improve as the angels. وَمَا مِنَّا إِلَّا لَهُ مَقَامٌ مَعْلُومٌ. We have a set station. We cannot go beyond that station, the angels. And it's because they are pure soul, no body. This mixture of soul and body gives the capacity for human beings to experience things, to experience two aspects of creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, the physical aspect is very important. It's our base, it's our origin, it's the blessed type of creation that Allah has created. Allah talks about the earth, that we have blessed the earth, وَبَارَكَ فِيهَا. He puts His blessing and grace on the earth, on human body, and all these things. So if we think in this way, why not in paradise? We are blessed with the same sort of mixture, so that we can move ahead and ahead. If we are pure souls, then we would have a set station in the next world, like angels. And that's the end of it. However, the Quran tells us that paradise is not the end of it. It's the beginning of your life. Beginning of your life in which you have body and soul, and the soul can grow by having the body, having physical pleasures without any evil, and then the soul can grow in a sense that goes beyond all stations of the angels and things that, of course, are not imaginable for us. As the Quran says, many things in paradise you cannot imagine, and that's why we do not talk about it. وَلَا تَعْلَمُ نَفْسٌ مَا أُخْفِيَ لَهُمْ مِنْ قُرَّةِ أَعْيُنٍ. No soul could ever imagine or know that what is kept or hidden for good people in paradise. So I don't think there is anything wrong to imagine that we will have a physical life there.
Okay. I wish Dr. Nizar would have been here during the time when you were discussing Surah Shad, the paradise. At that time when we discussed that we'll be able to drink as much as we want, and we'll be able to eat as much as we want without any sort of drawbacks. And
yes.
There will be different levels of wines where will elevate our spirituality.
And we said that there is no time shortage there. So for intellectuals, they can go on discussing an issue for 500 years without any worries about their dinner or lunch.
Inshallah. Sisters, before we come back to brothers? Sister, yes? No? Comment in front?
We've come to this concept of the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala many times, especially in the Quran as well. I don't still understand what the throne means, because I think there's a sect, I think the Sunnis, who believe that Allah sits on the throne, and then when the fire says that I have too few people inside the fire, I want more people, Allah will put His foot in the throne, His foot in the fire, and then the fire will say, yes, I'm satisfied now. So what is this throne like? What does it mean, this throne of Allah?
Well, we had a full discussion of throne I think in several sessions. It's certainly not, as you have mentioned from Sunni sources, that Allah sits on the throne. Of course, in Sunni theology, we have many different theologians with different ideas. We have Hanbalites, and then Ash'arites, and then Mu'tazilites. They have very different ideas about this. As we said, the throne is something which encompasses everything. And therefore the throne cannot be in the universe, somewhere where Allah sits on it. It is something which encompasses the whole universe. The universe in the throne is just like a ring, a small ring in a vast desert. I think we mentioned this tradition about Arsh and Kursi. and then the comparison of those two things with the whole creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in a hadith from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam, we had that the whole creation of Allah compared to Kursi is just like a small ring in a huge desert, and the very Kursi itself compared to Arsh is just like a small ring in a huge desert again. So it's the expanse of Allah's creation, knowledge, and whatever. Apparently, it means a state of creation from which all other lower creations are decreed, and the command about it is issued. And that's why it's called Arsh, the throne, because when a king sits on a throne, the throne actually issues orders and commands, or the commands comes from the throne of the king. And that means that's the realm of the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's different from, of course, the throne that we know in this world. So all those type of anthropomorphistic interpretations, as Allah is sitting on the throne, then he comes down from his throne and looks. For example, we have this tradition that every night of Jummah, Allah comes down from his throne to the first sky and calls people, is there anyone who wants to repent, so that I accept his repentance. It's not, of course, like a king coming down his throne is impossible. And I think one of the people who have discussed this in a very, very beautiful way is Fakhr Razi. He was an Ash'arite, of course, theologian, but he derives all these Hanbali ideas about throne and everything. And he says, I would like to ask a Hanbalite theologian, when they say Allah comes down from his throne, that means that throne is now empty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at that time. And that means that when Allah goes and sits on his throne, the universe is empty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's just a nonsensical type of idea.
Thank you, sisters. We'll have a last question from Brother Ali here.
Alaikum. When will the time be when good will fight evil? I.e., good being Imam Mahdi and his army.
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
I was asking, when will good fight evil?
When we could fight evil?
Yeah.
When good will fight evil? Well, now, of course, in every human being, good fights evil. But the final victory of good over evil in the world, we are talking about human society, because in human soul there is always this fight of good and evil, and certainly if a person pursues good, the good will overwhelm and overcome evil. However, in human society, yes, we are told that at the time of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, the good would prevail over evil. And that would be an example of how human beings could have lived on this earth, but unfortunately they did not want to live like that.
Thank you, Rajini Sheikh Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad Salawat.
Allahumma salli.